If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. For more videos like this, people who drive over back roads, forests, woods, and other haunted roads. Have you had any creepy encounters with creatures, time slips, dimension shifts, cryptids, etc.? It was around 9 p.m. at night, and I was going about 80 miles per hour back home. It was so dark out there that I even had my brights on. I suddenly saw a very stocky silhouette with horns walking along the car. It even turned its head to glance at me while passing it up. To mention again, I was going fast, but I knew that I had a few seconds to see this thing walking ahead of me and look back at me. They must travel differently, because that was crazy. No, I didn't slow down, I kept going because who do I look like? A few months ago, while driving back from my friend's house while on the phone with another friend, I was coasting through a neighborhood I'd been through multiple times, chatting away, when I saw this tall white figure standing in the middle of the road, like right on the yellow lines, facing my direction and completely still. It was bald, and it looked like it was wearing long robes or something. The thing was also way taller than a human because, at first, I thought it was a homeless person, but as I kept driving and tried to register what was happening, it like swooshed beside my car, and I screamed. My best friend was yelling, "Are you okay?" on my speakerphone. The white, glowing thing stood beside my car outside my window, just perfectly still as I drove by. And at first I thought it was glowing because of my headlights, but it was still glowing as it was beside me, still facing the road, and so tall that its hips were at my eye level. I kept driving, shell-shocked. I got home safely, but I was completely freaked out. I asked my dad what he thought it could be, because he's super religious. His guess is something from a different dimension. I feel crazy, but I know what I saw. I was completely sober and wide awake, too. Ever since this happened, it's been on my mind. I've kind of been hoping I would see the thing again, just for confirmation that I'm not crazy. Has anyone ever experienced something like this? We work in Hohenwald, Tennessee, and we're coming home from work driving up a road called Natchez Trace a few hours ago at 1:30ish a.m. Whatever it was as tall and fast as hell. I've never seen anything move that fast. It jumped completely over the road. The weirdest part was that it stopped, and we could see it looking at us from the tree line. Had almost human-looking eyes but were bigger. It was standing, and we could see its eyes, but it was definitely trying to stay out of sight. It didn't really look like what I would imagine a Bigfoot would look like. Maybe more slender, but it moved too quickly to get an accurate description, of course. It seems to be how it goes with strange sightings. It's extra strange because, when I was a kid, my grandparents and I witnessed a white creature messing with their chicken coop. It was also tall and fast. Now we're sitting at home, freaking the duck out. Has anyone ever seen anything like that? We grew up in the upstate of South Carolina, where there was nothing for miles. My best friend, who is 36, told me about an encounter he and a mutual friend had while driving down an old country road. They said they were just taking a drive and drinking a few beers when they turned a sharp curve in the road. They saw what, at first, they thought was a man on all fours, but as they got closer, they realized it wasn't a man but had the head of a man. The thing's body stretched halfway over the road. It wasn't pale white, but he described it as like a dark ash, and he said the thing never looked back, it was just the back of the head. He said he stopped a few meters away because they had run up in the thing, so he slammed on the brakes while our mutual friend Andrew was screaming to drive. You would just have to know my best friend James to know, but James got out of the car. He said it was like a man but with very long legs and arms that turned up or backwards, kind of like a grasshopper. That is how it explained it. He said that it didn't move like, well, when it moved. It was moving not straight forward but sideways, like a crab. I had a similar experience 2 years later. My sister and I were driving to a haunted walk in Lebanon, Maine, called Destination Haunt, and while in the town trying to find the place, we drove onto this really old dirt road called Lord Road from the east. At the time we turned onto the road, it was day and the sun was out. As soon as we started driving down, the sky turned near black like night, as if the sun were setting and a fog engulfed the road. We quickly started joking about how this is like one of those wrong turn roads in those horror movies where a group of kids get lost in the woods and never leave. It added to the effect when we drove over an old wooden bridge suspended over a river. My sister acknowledged the narrowness of the road and asked how two cars could fit together while traveling in opposite directions. I joked, well, no one ever leaves this place. In Maine, all you see are fields of trees for hundreds of miles at a time, but the trees on this road looked unusually different. They were all collectively old and had the color sucked out of them. Their branches and bases curved in usually zigzag patterns, unlike conventional trees that grow in a pattern to get the most sunlight. I drove a few miles until I had enough of the massive puddles and decided to call the place we were trying to find. They told me that their location was miles away on the west side of this road and to turn back because the east side was flooded and we should enter the west end entrance located on the other side of town instead. We turned around and saw a moose walking across the road, very normal in Maine, but right behind it was a 10-foot tall black, as can be two-legged, and unnaturally slim creature running unnaturally fast across the road. My sister screamed, it looked like a slender man. Only it had huge black, jagged horns and no apparent bodily features or shape to it. It looked like a 2D cutout of an unnatural human. When we drove by where he ran, we looked into the woods and saw it standing on two legs next to the moose. It leaned over in a hunchback manner and started walking around on all limbs, and there were others just like it emerging from the mist. We drove the hell out of there, hoping my engine wouldn't seize from the huge puddles, but on our way back, we saw two abandoned buildings with old cars from the 50s and 60s that rotted into the earth. Those houses were not there when we originally drove down. The creepiest part was when we got back to the main road because the sun was almost set and the sky was almost pitch black. When we pulled out of the road, the sun reappeared, and the sky readjusted to the day as if nothing ever happened. Later that night, I looked at maps, and the road was completely different on there, filled with things that weren't there when we were driving, and all the houses looked new. After telling a few people about it, someone told me that Lebanon, Maine, is known to have a lot of strange paranormal stuff happen and that there is even a self-proclaimed witch fortune teller who lives there. Has anyone here experienced something like this? About 13 to 15 years ago, my, now, wife and I were driving from Virginia to Tennessee. We were in the mountains, on the interstate, I-40, in the middle of nowhere. I don't think I was more than an hour or two past I-81, but I could be wrong. It was pitch black, late at night, and nobody else was on the road. A few cars drove by on the other side of the interstate from time to time. However, we were the only cars on this stretch of road, in either direction, at the time of our sighting. A large creature ran across the interstate, from our left to the right, towards the woods. It sort of galloped like a horse, but its mouth, teeth, and face were very canine, upper body thick, lower body thin, like a dog. Its body somewhat resembled a wolf, but it was too tall to be one, especially for Tennessee. It was as tall or slightly taller than our car. Its upper body was very thick compared to its lower body. It paused between the lanes, looked at us, and then darted into the woods. I'm a logical person, but the creature struck fear in both of us. A friend later told me that we might have seen a balding black bear. But, given the size and body shape, I just don't think that was the case. We both talk about the sighting from time to time. I was driving at night with my brother. I saw a flash of movement on the side of the road that caused me to slam on my brakes, anticipating a deer to run out, only to see a transparent blur cross the road. I thought something was wrong with my eyes, but after I slammed on the brakes, my brother exclaimed, "Did you duck and see that?" He saw the same thing as I did. Let me know what's up with this oddity if you've had an encounter yourself. It was the winter of '95 in rural Pennsylvania. It was a totally clear, cold night. We were driving home from my father's house on a back road I had driven on a million times. While driving, she saw something in the sky out the passenger window through some trees and said, "What's that?" I glanced quickly and didn't see anything. About a quarter mile further down the road, we made a right on another road, and there it was. About 300 feet up that road, I pulled off onto a small dirt road and got out. I was absolutely astonished at what I was looking at. I always say, it was about 4 or 5 telephone poles high off the ground, as right there on the corner of the main road and dirt road was a telephone pole I used for scale, I guess you could say. Again, I know what I saw. It was not a stealth fighter or bomber. It would have fallen out of the sky. It was moving so slowly. Not to mention the fact that it was totally silent. Obviously, to this day, the craziest ducking thing I've ever seen is. Period. About 10 years ago, I was on my way south on 99 between Sacramento and Galt at like 11 p.m., driving about 70 miles per hour, when, near the side of the freeway, I saw something very long, white or pale pinkish, with a face I remember describing as rabbit/bear/man. Its eyes reflected back at me very brightly, and it moved very smoothly and quickly back into the brush on weird, ducked up limbs. I was moving so fast and had loud music on, so I wasn't able to observe for long or listen for any sounds. It scared the duck out of me, and when I got to my then boyfriend's house, I broke down, trying to describe what I saw. At this point, 10 long years later, and with many substances between now and then, I frankly do not remember exactly what it looked like, but I remember how I felt, and my now husband is able to tell me exactly how I described it to him. I convinced myself it wasn't real and never really talked about it, but a few years later, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I told a very close friend who then freaked out and said her friend, someone I'd never met before, saw something similar. It was off the freeway in Northern California, and a car full of people all saw it. He had described it to her exactly the same way I described it to my husband. We met a while later, and both had one of those weird crying/goosebumps but not actually sobbing moments talking about it. Has anyone here seen something like that? With more of an animal face, ducked up limbs, and on all fours? Or am I dealing with something different, lol? This story happened in 2012. We just finished sending off a friend to an airport, so we started heading home at around 4 p.m. We lived about 3 hours away, and right about 5 p.m., when the sun started to go down and darkness began enveloping everything, a figure caught my eye hovering just a few meters above and sometimes beside our car. It looked like a black-skinned, full-bodied small human with bat-like wings and legs tightly fused together as if conjoined. It started to appear somewhere in a farming province, through small populated towns with roads lined with thick trees traversing endless rice fields. My friends saw it too, and we did not get horrified by it, but rather all questions ran through our heads and through us, finding out why it was there and what it was. It just hovered and flew at the same speed as our car, and every turn we made, it also did. It was following us. I took out my phone to take a photo of it, but the darkness prevented me from taking any good shots as it was almost completely dark, and this creature goes so high and only reappears from a good distance, good enough to be seen. I lit a flashlight on it from time to time, but it was so good at avoiding it. Sentient. We did not want to provoke it, so we just drove on. My friend, who was driving, saw the creature occasionally in his side mirror but just calmly drove on. Its face was black, as if all its facial parts had marbled with the black leathery skin that covered every inch of its body, at least from a distance of judgment. The fright we felt turned into calm and eventually folly. We couldn't understand why this creature was following us. It sometimes hovered as close as 5 meters and sometimes suddenly disappeared in the thicket of trees. For a couple of hours, it followed us until we reached the city where we lived. It just vanished, just like that. There were 4 of us who saw the creature, and to this day, we couldn't find any convincing explanation for it. Yes, it stopped following us after a few hours of driving, but we know it's still out there following someone else at this very moment. This was back in college in central Pennsylvania. It was late, probably around midnight, on a weeknight, and my roommate and I had been smoking and trying to find something to do. We decided to go to a tunnel in the woods that was supposed to be haunted. People have basic ghost stories from visits there, but nothing too scary. My roommate and I get in his car and start driving there. We get to this tunnel in the middle of the woods, and when I say middle of the woods, I mean middle of the woods. It's very dark, and all you can really make out are shadows from the moonlight. We get there and follow all the directions to see a ghost. Drive through the tunnel, turn around, stop in the middle, turn the car off, etc. We are sitting there for a while, probably like 15 to 20 minutes, just talking. We were getting ready to leave, and out of the right side of the tunnel, I started to see a shape coming out of the bushes, but I couldn't really make out what it was. This thing then crawls into the middle of the tunnel, just sits there, hunches over, and turns its head to look at the car, then quickly shuffles on all fours to the other side of the tunnel. It looked exactly as other people have described here, long, skinny limbs and a smaller torso, definitely not something I had seen before or have seen again. After seeing this thing, all I could say was go. Even before I got the words out, my roommate had turned his car on and started driving as fast as he could without tearing up the bottom of his car out of the woods. When we got out of the woods and onto the road, my roommate said, "You know Lord of the Rings, right?" This solidified that I saw what I saw, and my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. Not me, but my best friend and her boyfriend both insist that they got stuck driving in some sort of time loop. Something like they kept driving the same stretch of road over and over, and they were pretty freaked out, but my friend refused to pull over in that area, so they kept driving, and eventually the road changed. From what I remember, it was a dark night. There was some creepy tree in an open field along this road, and then a bridge that they went over before it would loop back. This was probably 8 years ago in North Washington State. After that, my friend would refuse to go up to that area. I've looked online, but I haven't stumbled upon anything like what a friend and I saw years ago. I'm hoping someone here can maybe provide insight or point me in the right direction. I am going to say it was summer, about 1990. I lived in a small town in Pennsylvania. A friend and I were heading to the next town over, and we were taking a shortcut on a rural road. Houses were few on this road. We reached a stop sign, intending to turn right to head towards the main road. There was a house on our left. It was dark outside at the time, and we saw a strange pattern of lights above the house. We thought maybe they were having a get-together in the back, and what we were seeing was a sort of dance light, like the ball in a dance club. Haze and fog aren't uncommon, so we thought the light was just hitting low-hanging fog. The light pattern was ghostly pale, not bright at all. It consisted of a central round light surrounded by smaller circular round balls, smaller than the center one. It was like 20 feet over the top of the house. The outer balls would rotate around the center, slow to a stop, converge towards the center ball, then return to their former position and begin to rotate again. We sat there for about 2 minutes watching, debating what it was. The owner must have seen us sitting at the stop, and they turned the porch light on and opened the front door. We just left at that point. As we reached the main road, we saw the light moving across the sky. It was dim, and the mountain terrain made it difficult to keep it in sight. We saw it off in the distance, not at a very high altitude, but at a fair distance from us. We eventually lost sight of it as the road ran downhill, and we never saw it again. To this day, I still have no idea what we saw. It didn't appear to be solid, but rather ghostly glowing balls. We told some friends what we saw, and of course they laughed at us. I still talk to my buddy. We're 1,200 miles apart now, but he remembers too. I used to do emergency power for the telecom industry in Southern California. One night, after an emergency call out, I was driving home down Highway 62, headed towards 29 Palms. It was around 3 a.m., and I was exhausted. My eyes were burning, and I had the radio blasting, windows down, AC on full blast, and I was chain smoking cigarettes, trying to stay awake. I hadn't seen another car for hours. I'm flying down these roads at like 85, just trying to make it to 29 Palms so I can grab a motel room and get some sleep, but as I'm driving, I start to nod off. I catch myself 2 or 3 times, and then, just as I realize I've closed my eyes again, I jerk them open, see I've drifted across the road, jerk the wheel, overcompensate, fly off the other side of the road, and roll my truck 8 or 9 times before cracking my face into the steering wheel, and everything goes black. Just then I startle awake, like when you are falling asleep on the couch and get that falling feeling. I'm in my truck, asleep in the driver's seat. My truck is in park, halfway on the shoulder and halfway in the road, still running, and the radio is still blaring. It's roughly the same time of night I thought it had been when I fell asleep and was on the same spot on the road. I have no memory of pulling over or putting my truck in park. I was so freaked out by this that I was wide awake afterwards. I ended up driving all the way home and never getting back to sleep that night. There's something going down in my town. Without giving personal details, there have been multiple sightings of a black-clad human roaming the open desert around the community college late at night and several disappearances in the town in the last few years. I was out there tonight, and the whole place feels off. I took the chance to visit the college, and the road leading to it from the side of town is absolutely haunted. I personally saw what appeared to be a person standing directly next to the road watching my car drive by at one point, but I still don't know if it was real or if my eyes were playing tricks on me. There is definitely something going on. Anyone else have any experiences out there? Maybe not paranormal, but there does appear to be someone living in the desert, and multiple people have disappeared in the last few years. Very suspicious. The area I live in is notorious for being haunted by skinwalkers and additionally has an extremely high amount of drug and trafficking crime as it is relatively close to the Mexican border. I would often visit Beardstown to see my partner during my spring break. It was an escape from my life, and it was one of the only times we saw each other before we moved in together. He lived with his grandparents off of US 67, heading into town by the Swift plant. The road had houses on the left and fields to the right. Closer into town was a massive cemetery, across from the plant. That was the main area we would occupy since it was a little out of town. I think out of all the stories I have, a good starter might be the night the moon disappeared. A lot of things happened that night that were bizarre and just not right. My fiancée and I were headed back from St. Louis on March 22, 2019. It was specifically a waning gibbous and was directly behind us for the drive. We were driving through Little Indian when I noticed the moon was gone. No clouds, you could see the stars, but no moon. We stopped at a Conoco on the road and got out to look because it felt absolutely wrong. It was nowhere in sight, but we had to get home. It was 8 p.m. We drove into the area and headed towards this creepy-ass church outside of town called Shiloh Church. It was abandoned, creepy, and a whole different entity. The road before and after the church is covered in thick trees and has a dip in the road. This area would have thick fog and mist and sometimes have misty people shaped like figures just chilling in the road. We had the radio on low. Story about an experience at Rosewell Plantation in Gloucester, Virginia. Backstory: the plantation was built in 1725 to rival that of the governor's mansion in Williamsburg, but it burned down in 1916. The remains have been left basically untouched except for archaeological purposes, and it's creepy as duck. I went on Halloween night with some friends 10 years ago but ended up hiding in the car alone with a blanket over my head because I was so unnerved. So to get to Rosewell, it's this one-lane tree-lined road, literally the only way in. There are some houses nearby, but they are not super close. So we get there, and there's a parking area to the left of a cornfield that's surrounded by trees, and you have to walk past the field. The path eventually turns to the right, and boom, there are the burnt-out ruins of the house. So it's super creepy and desolate, and we're all scaring each other, and the wind is whistling, and we're like, oh, is that a piano in the wind? But it's all just fun. And we hear some dogs barking in the distance, but it's no big deal, so we all just explore. So we're walking past the cornfield towards the car. Keep in mind it's pitch ducking black outside except for our flashlight. I forget who sees movement in the field, but we all look over, and no shit, it's like this weird ghost mist. I swear, I'm not making this up. So we shine the light across the field and don't see anything. Once we turn the light back towards the path, there's a freaking ghost, like 3 feet away. Like a woman. Ducking scariest ghost woman. So we all freak out and run to the car. When we drove in, Rosewell did not want us to leave. So we basically just had to off-road in the ducking woods to escape from the ghost woman and dogs. So that's what happened. Rosewell is haunted. This didn't happen to me, but to my mom when I was around 10 or 11. She isn't one to believe in anything supernatural or to make up one of these stories, and she seems genuinely terrified when she tells me this story, so I personally believe her. My mom was driving home at night, not too late, around 7 p.m. after the sun went down, and was driving down the long, narrow street near our house, surrounded on both sides by thin strips of wood where we often have sightings of wild deer, turkeys, and coyotes. She was shocked to see a humanoid figure stumbling across the road, towards her headlights. The thing is, he didn't shield his eyes or anything. In fact, as she got closer, it looked like he had no facial features whatsoever. Just a smooth head, think Slenderman-like. He had a strange limp and seemed to be in danger or hurt. But my mom noped TF out of there and speeded the rest of the way home to tell me what had happened. She said she didn't sleep that night, fearing that thing might come back. I have no clue what it was to this day. My family and I took a road trip in 2010 when we lived in the northern region of Mexico. Our destination was to head all the way south to the peninsula in the state of Campeche. The purpose of the trip was to visit family who lived there. It wasn't the first time we've been on the road. Except this wouldn't be our regular 8-hour road trip. No, this was almost a 2-day trip. The first day we rose at 3 a.m., everything was running smoothly. So far, there is no traffic, no speed limits, and no animals that could potentially cause an accident on the highway. I'll say that at 10 p.m. that day, my father decided it was best to rest for the night and, in a few hours, catch up with the road. It had to be 2 a.m. when I woke up on the darkened highway. Dad had been up and driving since 12, that man is a trooper. Anyway, as I was saying, the roads are pitch black, and our only source of light were the luminous headlights of the Explorer. My father drove down a small hill, and when going up, we, my father, stepmother, and of course myself, saw what appeared to be a pair of pale humanoid-sized legs almost drop on the Explorer's hood, but were lifted back up in a swift, rapid motion. To the best of my understanding of how it looked, picture birds or bats flying, then imagine them expanding their wings to help them lift their bodies, preventing a fall. Hopefully this explanation was enough to get the mental picture. When this occurred, my dad did not stop driving. He hit on that gas and sped up. One thing you should know is that at the time, my skepticism of the supernatural was high, so of course I was not only in disbelief of what I saw but also shook up by the events. I sat back, blocking all my senses, and even though I knew my father and stepmother were speaking about the incident, all I could make out were muffling sounds. Logic could not explain the sight witnesses, yet I yearned for a logical explanation. Perhaps I was dreaming? Maybe I imagined it all. The mind sometimes plays tricks on one. For the rest of the ride, I remained silent, as did my father and stepmother. A gas station was about a mile or two away from where the incident occurred. Father pulled over to fill up, and once the filling assistant was done, Dad asked him if people had ever reported strange sightings on the highway. My father, being a big believer in the supernatural or paranormal, just had to know, yet not being a believer at the time, I was curious to hear what the man might say. The filler assistant turned his head over to his right, and since I was seated in the back, I had a good view of not only the sides but the back window as well. When he turned his head, I naturally turned mine to where he was looking, and it was at another employer, who, with wide eyes, shook his head to say no. The man who my father was speaking with took a short pause and admitted that there have been sightings, but neither of them have witnessed anything strange of the sort. On the journey from there on, I decided not to sleep in case whatever that thing was came back again. Playing in my mind were Jeepers and Creepers. Scenes of the broken down bus over and over again. That could have been us. 2 weeks later, and we're back home, unfortunately, with no strange encounters. Fast forward to maybe a month. One night, my father called me into his room, asking me to watch a video. I can't recall the exact title, but I do remember it being about the Mothman. After staring at him strangely, I watched said video. If Dad had shown this to me before, I wouldn't have bought into the idea. I didn't know who or what the Mothman was. The only crypt monsters I knew were Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster, which at the time seemed absurd, but I never dismissed the idea either. As I watched, I felt a chill throughout my body. I'm aware I sound like some nut job, but I know what I saw. On our days off right after high school, my cousin and I would routinely drive my parents' golf cart around the neighborhood and into the back of the large neighborhood because it was abandoned and completely overgrown. We knew all the abandoned construction trails through the forest and where they met back up to the roads, which were completely unbothered by any suburban houses. It was broad daylight, probably around 2 or 3 p.m., and we had parked the golf cart coming off of a trail and toward the concrete roads into the back part of the neighborhood. The grass on the unused lots was covered in weeds and grass that was probably 5 or 6 feet off the ground. We unleash the pipe. We take a few hits. All is peaceful. The birds are singing. The air is clear. He takes another hit and passes it to me. I start to light the bowl, and before I take a hit, I hear my cousin say my name twice. Very seriously. I panic and think the cops have just pulled up or something. I look at him, and he's staring straight ahead, shocked, and just says in a low voice, "What the duck is that, cuz?" I look up and down the road, and I see it. It's a little man peering out from the grass on the left side of the road, about 20 feet away. It looks like he is a naked humanoid completely covered in mud and crouched down as low as a person can go while still being mobile. It's not human, but it is human-shaped. With both of us staring at this creature, he backs up slightly, and then, it still disturbs me to remember this, the roadie runs faster than humanly possible across the concrete road and into the grass on the other side. It was like a human moving as fast as an insect does when it panics. Imagine crouching down as far as you can without falling over and then sprinting. This thing appeared to do just that. No words are needed. I disengage the parking brake and gas it. We drive all the way to the front of the neighborhood to the community center area, which is probably a mile away, and decide we should probably just go home. Lots of frustrated "what the duck was that?" followed because there was no rational explanation at all. We still talk about that story all the time. Funnily enough, about a year ago, my parents moved to a bigger house about 100 feet from where this happened once the neighborhood started building back there again. My mom owns a theater about 10 minutes away from our house. I go there every Saturday because we give classes to kids. To get there, you need to drive for a little while on a narrow road that follows the river. It then takes a very sharp turn and continues the other way, like a V. This story happened when I was 11. We were driving over there, and I was in the passenger seat. I was a very tall kid. I'm playing some games on my iPod, and I look up. I see a woman on the road about 10 meters in front of us. She has her back to me, and I think to myself, oh my God, we are going to hit this woman. She has long, dark brown hair and is wearing jean shorts and a blue shirt. It was fall. We get closer and closer to her, but my mom does not seem to see her. I am frozen, and I cannot say a word to her. As we are about a meter away from her, she turns her head and looks back straight at me. I close my eyes, thinking we are finally going to hit her. I feel something pass through me, kind of like when you have a high fever and your whole body aches. I open my eyes, and we are still driving. I look back, and there is no one on the road. But we got so close to her, she couldn't have gotten away. I told my mom this story a few years later. That's when she told me a friend's daughter died on the road. Her boyfriend was driving, and he was yelling at her. He hit a pole at the elbow of the road, and she died on impact. He lived. It happened a few years before my encounter. I recently went out to eat with a friend, and I brought up glitches in the Matrix as a topic of conversation. My friend had never heard of glitches before, but he was very curious and grew very interested as I described what they were. My friend immediately said, "I swear I've had some glitches happen to me, man." He then goes on to tell me 2 interesting stories that happened to him. Story 1. I was driving to work one morning around 6 a.m. and had just gotten on the highway. As I drove, I came up with a car that just looked a little off. As I approached it, the only way I could describe what I saw was that the car looked like it was not fully loaded. It looked like it was buffering still or something. It looked pixelated and blurry, like a video game or something that's still loading. As I passed the car, I was so confused about what I was seeing, but it quickly fixed itself as I made my way past the car. I looked behind me, and it was a normal looking car with a younger girl driving it. It looked completely different than it did seconds before. Story 2. The other time was also while I was driving. I was on the main road, driving, and was about to pass a car coming in the opposite direction. As the car passed, I saw all 4 people in the car staring directly into my eyes. What makes it weirder is that all 4 people were extremely pale white, like paper. Also, they had really big black eyes, kind of like raccoon eyes. They also did not have pupils. As they passed me, they were all locked dead in my eyes. It was a father and mother in the front seat and a boy and girl in the back seat. None of them broke eye contact as we drove by each other. So there you have it. I don't know if these are glitches per se, but if so, any explanation is welcome. I was spooked when my friend told me these stories, but I figured someone out there may have had a similar experience. I was on my way to go camping and had just crossed the Mackinac Bridge to get to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It was storming, and it just started pouring buckets of rain. While driving up a hill, my daughter and I saw a man standing in the middle of the road. There was not great visibility with the sheets of rain, but we both pointed out the man standing in the middle of the road, and we were worried he would get hit by a car. When he turned, it was not a man, it was a huge black dog. We both thought it was a man at first, and then it was a dog, and I can't explain it. It could have just been the combination of looking up from the bottom of a hill and the rain. I just think it is odd that my daughter and I both thought we saw a man. I stopped on one side of the road to help it, and so did a man on the other side in a truck. I love dogs and always stop to help when I see one in the road, but I hoped that someone else would be able to help it because my truck was stuffed with camping stuff and the only place it could go in my truck would be the front seat with my daughter and me. It was still in the middle of the road, looking back and forth between the man and me. Seeing it up close, I was a bit surprised to see how big it was. I also felt uneasy and intimidated by this animal. It looked almost like a black German shepherd, but also wolfish. I was a dog groomer, so I have been around a lot of big dogs, and this one was huge. If I had to guess what breed it was, I would say a wolf hybrid. The guy yelled over, asking if it was my dog, and I yelled back, no. The man then yelled here, boy, and patted his leg, and the dog ran off to him. Seeing that the dog was being taken care of, I got back in my truck and got back on the road towards our camping destination. My daughter was telling me how it looked like a person standing in the road, and then when it turned, it was a dog. It was around 10 p.m., and I was driving home with a coworker or friend through the windy roads that take you from New Hampshire to Massachusetts. We'd actually been talking about the moon, the way it affects the tides, various animals, superstitions, etc. There was a lull in the conversation, and it was silent when we went around a bend and the trees thinned, opening up the sky. The moon was full and gigantic. It took up maybe 1/4 of the sky and was so bright that I had to squint and shield my eyes. Another curve in the road, and we were back under the trees, and it was out of view. I pulled over. Neither of us had spoken yet, and I wasn't sure what to make of it, so I turned to my friend and said, did you notice something weird just then? And he practically shouted back at me, you mean how the moon was suddenly ducking huge and right in our faces? We were both so shocked that we got out of the car and paced around it a couple times. I don't even know how to describe the feeling. When we got back in the car, I turned around and drove back along that road again, and the moon seemed farther away but still larger than normal. I turned around again, and we drove the rest of the way home in relative silence. I'm not stupid, I understand how the moon works and how totally impossible it all is, but this was something that happened to me and my passenger. Every time I try to make sense of it, my conclusion only seems weirder. If what I saw was impossible and he saw it too, then maybe. Did he not actually see it? Was he not actually there? He seemed even more freaked out by it than me, it was just so surreal. So unsettling. To this day, I don't know what to make of it. So this happened about 7 to 8 years ago, I believe I was about 16 or 17. I'm 24 now. In the Redwoods area of Northern California, a bit past Sonora, up by Big Trees National Park, more specifically in Arnold, California. Short backstory, my family has a timeshare in Arnold called Mount Retreat. About once or twice a year, we would go up there. More often than not as a whole family. My sister, who is only a year and a half younger than me, and both of my grandparents, sometimes my mother as well. On this particular trip, just my grandparents and sister. We had some friends that lived in that area and invited them to come spend the night with us in our cabin. They were a couple years older than us. I must have been 16 or 17, so they were about 19 or 20. It was a male friend, and his wife was about 5 or 6 months pregnant. They had a car and were willing to drive us around the area after our grandparents went to sleep. So at this time, there is a small, very small town with various shops, gas stations, and a grocery store that stayed open rather late. This was around midnight at the time, and we decided we wanted snacks or ice cream, something that warranted driving down the road, about 5 miles to the grocery store area. So we all piled in their cars, some sort of SUV type, and we went to the little town down the road. We drove around for a bit, got our snacks, and peeked in some windows of little shops that had various odd knickknacks and wood carvings in the windows. The shop that always sticks out the most to me up there is next to a gas station that has a clown statue holding a sign in the window, which is pretty creepy at night. But we got back in the car after messing around for about 45 minutes. So the time at this point would have been about 12:45, or around 1 a.m. It does not take long to drive back up to the cabin area, especially at this time of night. So we are driving and driving for what seems like a very long time, and we start to question if we missed the turn for the cabin area. There is a pretty big sign for the turnout, and we were all looking for it during the drive. The 2-lane road up there is lined on either side by huge redwoods and gets rather dark. But our driver had their high beams on. For some reason, all of a sudden we take a look at the clock, and it is nearly 1:45 a.m. It does not take more than 10 to 15 minutes to drive from the cabin to the store. We are all convinced that we missed the turnout for the cabin area, but we keep on driving. We are all freaking out about how suddenly it's 1:45 a.m., and then, just as we are calming down, the big sign for the turnout is in front of us, up the road just a few steps. None of us can explain what happened or how it felt like we were driving for a ridiculous amount of time on what should have been a very short drive. Suddenly, 45 minutes had passed, and we had just gotten to the sign. I live in Alaska, so during the winter, the sun goes pretty early. My mom and I were going to check on our animals, which were in a barn just outside the village we were living in. It was already dark for the night, even though it was only mid-afternoon. While we were driving down the road, a huge bird appeared out of nowhere in front of our truck. It was flying just in front of us, and its wingspan was as wide as the dirt road we were on. After a few seconds, it disappeared just like it had appeared. It didn't fly ahead out of sight, it was just gone. I asked my mom what we'd just seen, and she said she didn't know but was glad that I had seen it too. A few weeks later, I mentioned it to my mom again, and she told me that she asked one of the natives about what we'd seen, and he told her that based on the description, it sounded like a thunderbird. This happened a couple nights ago. My girlfriend and I were driving home from a concert we went to Ohio to see. It was probably around 1 a.m., and we were on some rural backroads our GPS told us to take. There were houses with lots of open fields between them, and the road was pretty hilly. As we were coming up the hill, our headlights lit up a field to my left. I was driving, and I saw something strange. I saw what appeared to be a tall, lanky, but strong black figure run on 2 legs from one end of the field to the other. Kind of going in the opposite direction we were going, and at an angle. It was like it was trying to cut into some woods off in the distance. It was fast too, because I only saw it for a second or two before it disappeared. I asked my girlfriend if she saw it, but she said she didn't. I explained what I saw, and she believed me. We tried to rationalize it by saying maybe it was a tree or something playing some weird light trick on us. But the vibe I got from seeing that thing was really off. It felt like I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. Like that, whatever was there shouldn't have been. Was this a cryptid of some sort, or were the headlights just messing with me? I work out in the country and take back roads for the last half of my trip to work. The road I was on is about 3 to 4 miles long. My experience occurred within a distance of 1,000-ish feet on that road before ending. It was still dark at the time, 6:20 or something. My car came with very bright LED headlights and fog lights, and I can see very well in the darkness as I was driving with all lights on, and I didn't want to hit a deer. On the right side of the road, just a couple hundred feet in front of my car, I saw what looked like a human made of black mist, but it was dark, so I assumed it was someone just dressed in black. I hit my brakes to make sure I drove by them safely, but as I hit my brakes, the entity disappeared and appeared a couple hundred to a few hundred feet away on the right side again. This is when I know that I am experiencing something paranormal or non-human. I almost got to it before it disappeared again. It appeared a few hundred feet away on the left side of the road. That was the last I saw of it. The best visible description I can give it is a human that is completely black, like a void, with a slight to medium haziness or cloudiness around it. Has anyone experienced something similar? Are there widespread sightings like this? Is there a general consensus on what this entity or being is? So this happened in my hometown. My uncle, his girlfriend at the time, and I were on our way back home. We took this back road on the outskirts of town. We always took this route, as it was the easiest way across town and home. My uncle is driving his girlfriend dead asleep in the back seat, and I'm riding a shotgun. We turn on this familiar road and drive a ways down it. As we go, there are houses on our left and the desert on our right. I catch a glimpse of what looks like a humanoid hunched over with its arms extended to the ground, almost as if it were on an all-fours kind of breeze across the road. It quickly ran into the desert, but from those few seconds on, I could clearly see what appeared to be a mask made of fur on its face and two different sized antlers coming off the top. But what really struck me and still gives me the creeps to this day are the eyes. I peered right into them, and to this day, I can't explain the horror I looked into. This all happened in a matter of seconds. I looked at my uncle and tried exclaiming what I had just seen. He says I looked pale, and my eyes were full of fear. I finally get it out and tell him, I think I just saw a skinwalker. As I'm saying those words, the biggest owl either of us have ever seen with snow-white feathers flies next to my window and hoots at us, then flies away. His girlfriend is suddenly awake in the back seat and starts telling us about the correlation between skinwalkers and how they morph into owls. She grew up on the reservation, so she is more versed in the lore of entities like this than we were. She told us other things as well, but I don't remember much. It was surreal, and that encounter still gives me goosebumps to this day. About a year and a half ago, in June, my brother and I were driving back from Ely, Nevada, to Las Vegas. If you know Nevada, you understand how sparsely populated the state is outside of Reno, Carson City, and Las Vegas. So, we were about an hour or so into the drive when we realized we couldn't make it back without falling asleep, as it was already pretty late at night. We agree to stop at a hotel for the night. We come to a town called King. I have never heard of a King, Nevada, nor have I found anything about it since, no matter what I look up or ask. It looked like one of those old western movie towns where there's one road with little buildings on each side and about the same size as one of those towns. All there really is to note is the hotel we stayed at, called King Hotel, and a McDonald's. The few other buildings didn't seem worth more. We have not seen anyone or any cars while driving in the town. We go into the hotel and see the only person we have ever seen in this place. The single clerk is at the front desk. We get our room key and go straight to bed. We are awoken by talking outside at what we assume is around 8, because when we woke up, we realized there was no clock in the room. In fact, there are only the beds, toilet, shower, and sink. Not even a dresser or TV. We go outside to leave, the hotel clerk isn't there to check out, so we leave our key at the desk. No one else was inside the hotel or outside. We still haven't figured out where the talking came from. We go to McDonald's to eat, however, it's drive-through only. Order our McMuffins at the drive-through, then round the corner to pay and get our food at the next window. We see the bag already sitting on the shelf outside the window, with the window closed and dark. Get our food and leave without paying. We didn't want to stick around anymore. We were honestly getting a bit scared at this point. There is no cell service, nor do we ever remember arriving there. We just remembered suddenly finding ourselves in that town. I was reminded of this because a few hours ago, I read a green text about a similar experience someone had in Utah. We only saw one person there, the hotel attendant. We drove for half an hour before we saw any road signs again. He and I both remember it exactly the same, so I don't think we hallucinated or something. Any ideas of what happened in that town? This happened a couple years ago. I was probably 19 or 20 when this happened. I live in Tennessee, in a really small town that I don't feel comfortable disclosing the name of because it's that small. It's about 70 or 80 miles from Nashville, to get an idea. There's always been weird things that happen in this town. There's so many houses that are just accepted as haunted. There's streets with a few ghost stories attached, but as far as I know, the street I saw the hound on hasn't had anything of the sort. This street is literally only one over from where I live. There's a crossroads there. It was late at night, probably around 10 or 11, and my mom was driving. I was in the passenger's seat. I was scrolling through a playlist on my phone when suddenly there was a change in the air and I was compelled to look up, and right as I did, something darted across the road, something that was big and dark and too fast to be natural. When I saw it, my body went cold and rigid. Fear immediately took over my entire system, and I started to cry. I don't get scared easily, and my mom knows this, and I think that's partly why she believes it really was something and not just a dog. I was shaking and still crying as we entered town, and my mom pulled over in the safety of a gas station's lights so that I could try to calm down. We don't go on the road at night anymore. We barely go during the day. I get a sense of dread every time I look in its direction. There's been a few nights since then where I've heard strange howling that doesn't match up with any of the neighborhood dogs, and I know it's got to be the hound. There was another instance last year where my mom saw something dart across a road that connects to the one road, not a part of the crossroads at the other end, but I didn't see it that time. She says it made her feel cold and terrified the moment she saw it, however. And it's probably unrelated, but about a year after the initial encounter, we were driving through town at sunset, and a big, black dog appeared out of nowhere. We should have hit it, but it seemed to disappear beneath our tires. We pulled over, and there was no evidence we'd hit it, but the dog was definitely there. I didn't get the same feeling as the first time. I was definitely scared, but I think it was more the prospect of wrecking, but it didn't send me into a full-scale panic attack like the hellhound had. Maybe it was a black dog, because there was no way it was something normal. It was about 10 years ago that my buddy and I were driving from New Jersey to Chicago. We were making the trip overnight to avoid traffic. I honestly couldn't tell you exactly where we were, but it was somewhere in Pennsylvania. We were heading west, but not quite to Pittsburgh yet. It's like 2 or 3 in the morning. The sky is the clearest I've ever seen in my life. I felt like I could see every single star in the sky. There's nobody on the road with us, and we have nothing but trees on both sides of the road. Literally out of nowhere, a blue orb appeared. It wasn't very large, maybe the size of a car? It hovered in front of our car, above the road. It was emitting very bright blue light, which is why I'm just calling it a blue orb. It appeared out of nowhere and seemed to maintain a very precise distance in front of our car. It wasn't getting closer or farther. It did this for maybe 10 seconds. 5 seconds? I'm not sure. We were both asking each other what we were looking at. After that time, it shoots straight up extremely fast, and just like that, it is gone. I didn't know it was aliens. I don't know what the hell it was. I live in what is often called a flyover state in the US, so there are large stretches where it's just fields, and the highway I was on was in an area where there's hardly anything for miles. My parents were visiting a neighboring town to visit some friends, and I happened to be in the same town visiting my own friends, so we decided I would just meet up with them and follow them home since I live with them and am not as familiar with the back roads as my dad is. All was well for the first half hour, until we passed through Stull just past Lawrence. For those who don't know, Stull Cemetery is rumored to be a gate to hell and home to a lot of unexplained phenomena. It was here that I lost sight of my parents' car in front of me. I chalked it up to driving at night. Maybe I'd just lost them. And I pulled over and pulled up directions on my phone and made my way home. I got there to find my parents frantic. I had been gone 3 hours. My last recollection was being directly behind them. I was absolutely unaware of how much time had passed and had no idea what happened in those 3 hours. I can't even remember what music was on, although I'm pretty obsessive about setting up playlists. My parents did attempt to call, as reflected in both their phone records, but I didn't receive any calls, and my phone doesn't show I missed anything. I honestly cannot account for where I was or what happened. Any ideas? Back in the summer of 2011, I was 19 and had relocated my living situation for a few weeks while I was in between apartments. Long story on its own. Due to my relocation, I was pretty far from my work, and I'd have to drive about an hour south on Highway 45. At the time, I worked in Spring, Texas, and could get away with a lot of stuff because we were too short-staffed, and I was one of the more experienced members of our night crew. On my first shift, having to drive to work from this new area, I ended up getting a bit turned around and lost. I was driving on what I thought had been the highway, but after a bend, it suddenly transitioned into a single-lane road, and then further down, it transitioned to just a dirt road. Ever since it stopped being a highway, there were no areas to turn off. I left my place at around 7 p.m. to arrive at work by 8 p.m. for my shift. This happened around the midway point of the distance, so even though I didn't check the time when it happened, it'd be a fair estimate to say the sudden change in environment happened at approximately 7:30 p.m. Thinking this was really strange, as I'd been up and down 45 a million times and never seen something like this, I figured I would just drive until I reached a rest stop or something to check my location on GPS and turn around at. It got to be a little uneasy when I went a full 20 minutes without a single spot to stop at or turn into and without seeing a single other car. I saw a bridge coming up and thought, okay, surely there will be somewhere to turn around up wherever this bridge leads. Then I saw it. You are now entering Atascosa. At this point, I was already going to be super late for work no matter what, so I figured I'd just send my boss a text and all would be fine. No signal. Figuring, what the hell? I'm going to get in trouble anyway. May as well check out this place for a few minutes and see where I ended up. It was very unsettling. The town looked like it had to have been abandoned for decades. Buildings all around looked to be falling apart and in terrible disrepair. Not a single building had a light on, and there were no cars or people anywhere in sight. The roads were a mix of some dirt roads and some normal roads in varying states of disrepair. Hell, I didn't even see animals anywhere as I drove through. I could tell as I drove that this town was essentially an island. Every direction seemed to have a beach and a bridge that connected it to land, at least from what I was able to see as I drove around a more elevated area. After about a half hour of driving around, unable to find any signs of life, I managed to find my way back to the bridge I came in on and got the hell out of there. When I got to work about 2 hours late, my boss called me back into his office to have a chat. I've been working there since I was 16 and have never been so much as a single minute late, so he was willing to hear me out. I told him the honest truth of what happened, and he seemed increasingly concerned as my story went on. He and another coworker looked on a map out of curiosity, since they'd never known of any abandoned towns in the area, and found some place called Atascocita and assumed I'd misread the sign. But when they opened the maps, Atascocita was nothing like the town I'd seen. The only thing they had in common was a sort of similar name and one bridge that connected it from across a lake, but the town I was in was surrounded by water and had bridges connecting it on each end. I'm only in contact with one coworker who was at work that day, and he's convinced I somehow got a bustling old-style town like Atascocita somehow confused with a long-abandoned ghost town even though they had nothing in common, just because we couldn't find any Atascocia on the map. 2 years later, when I went back to live in spring for a little while, I did try finding Atascocia again, this time with the intent of filming while there to prove it existed, but alas, no matter how much I retraced my steps, I was never able to find that strange empty path to the bridge again. I'm adamant that I was in a town where no one can seemingly find any evidence of ever having existed. From the few people who I have told over the years, I've gotten answers like slipping stuffed horses, jaripellos, and drinking. While he has since put down the bottle, he still loves horses and jaripellos, but back in the day, he would occasionally ride his horse out across the road to the neighboring pueblo to hang out or hit up some parties. One early morning, he was returning home on horseback from a party in the neighboring pueblo. He was a bit drunk and was just casually making his way home when suddenly the air grew still and the night went silent. He said something just felt off, and his horse could sense it as well. My dad says that you can always tell what a horse is focusing on by looking at their ears, and in this case, my dad's horse's ears were perked up stiffly, focusing on the empty field beside them as well as all around them. Thinking that there might be some sort of animal stalking them, my dad looked around, but the fields beside them were empty, and there weren't any bushes or things for an animal to hide behind. Suddenly the air went cold, and my dad felt goosebumps on the back of his neck, almost as if something were right behind him. That's when my dad's horse couldn't take it anymore and took off, running for its life. My dad held on tightly and tried several times to bring the horse to a stop, but it was dead set on getting the hell away from whatever they had just encountered. Eventually they finally reached their pueblo, and the horse calmed down and came to a stop. Never before or after had the horse behaved that way, and it left my dad shook up. Needless to say, he was sober by the time he reached home. My cousin's passenger. My cousin is a few years older than me, so this story takes place many years after my dad died. One late night, my cousin was driving my uncle's pickup with peripheral vision. After a couple miles of panic and sobbing, he eventually reached the neighboring pueblo, and his presence gradually faded away. He made it home safe, but the experience has scarred him. My mom and cousin spotted a hitchhiker. This last one is short, and it actually took place only a couple years ago. This happened to my cousin from the previous story and to my mom. A couple years ago, my mom visited Mexico to hang out with family. Her return flight home was in the early morning, so my aunt had my cousin drive her to the airport. Along the way, on that same patch of road, they spotted a man hitchhiking on the side of the road. This was a very strange sight, as not many people hitchhike along that road, much less early in the morning before the sun even comes out. As you might deduce from the last couple of stories, the land around that road is largely empty. There's not really any good reason to be out there at that time. Jokingly, my cousin suggested they pick him up. Everybody in the car nervously laughed it off, and they drove past the man. As they continued along, however, they swore they could hear someone whistling at them from out in the empty fields. This made them all very nervous, and they wondered if the man, whatever he was following them. Eventually, they reached the neighboring pueblo, where they also swore they spotted him standing just outside the entrance. 2007, on a fairly deserted stretch of dusty road near Iskandariyah, Iraq. I wasn't driving, I was the gunner, so I had a much better view than I otherwise would have. It's about 2300, or 11 p.m., and we have been driving since shortly after dark, and suddenly I see movement off to the side of the road in the air. It looked like a manta ray, but it was flying. Brown, with a tail and everything. I watched it flap its wings a few times to gain height and soar over the road, off to the other side, and away. I asked if anyone else saw it, but nobody in the truck could have seen it. It was parallel to us and too high. I asked around later, and apparently I wasn't the only one to see something like that, specifically. My grandmother died almost 3 years ago. February will make 3 years. She and I were very close, and I am her namesake. Grandma had an affinity for birds, particularly hummingbirds and cardinals. In the 34 years of my life before her passing, I had maybe seen 4 or 5 cardinals in person. Since her death? In the neighborhood of 50 to 60. The first time I saw one was about 2 weeks after her death, on a morning when I was having a really tough time with grief. I was driving to work and had a thought like, I wish I could call her one more time. I always called her on my way to work every morning, when a cardinal flew across the road in front of my car. I nearly hit it. Nearly daily for a month in almost the same place, a cardinal would fly across the road in front of me. As time has gone by, my sightings have gotten less frequent, but they always seem to happen on days when I am low or near big holidays, my birthday, Christmas, etc. Other people with me also see them, so I know they are not figments of my imagination. Have others had experiences like this? Maybe not with cardinals, but other objects or animals? While on vacation in Arizona a few weeks ago, I was visiting family who live on the edge of the Navajo Nation. The town they live in is basically on the border of the reservations and such. The family in question is my mother's brother and sister, who live together with their spouses in a modest home, but the home is unimportant. I went there during my childhood every now and then and had several Navajo friends, so after a night out catching up with my 2 old friends, whose names I will not mention because of the events that took place that night, I was driving the 2 of them home. The female friend, whom we will call Sally, was fast asleep on the right side of the back seat, while the male friend, whom we shall call Frank, was wide awake on the left side of the back seat. As we're on the way to Frank's house, I see something on the side of the road that is briefly illuminated by my headlights. It looks like a large coyote walking down the side of the road on all 4s. Frank saw it first and pointed it out to me, so I slowed down and turned my lights on. What we both saw disturbed us so deeply that we had to wake Sally up to see if she would confirm that we were not crazy. When Sally woke up and looked out of the window, I had stopped the car at this point. She froze in her place, and the thing, which had been walking along at a leisurely pace until now, turned around and stood up on its hind legs. It did not look like a dog does when it stands on its legs, it looked like it was used to doing it. And before Sally could shake herself out of the soul-crushing fear she was in, Frank and I got a good look at it. It was everything the stereotypical definition of a werewolf was, with a few key differences. We saw that its snout was less like a wolf's and more like a hybrid between a wolf and a human. Rounded with a dog's nose slightly protruding out and sharp teeth, and its hands and feet both had claws on them that were seemingly permanently extended, or it was extremely hostile at the moment it saw us, or rather, her. By the time we were done gawking at the thing, fear started to take over curiosity. Sally snapped out of her own fear long enough to scream at me to drive as fast as I could. She refused to stop screaming until it was completely out of sight, and when we pulled over and she calmed down enough to regain coherency, we asked her what was going on. She explained that she could not tell us why, but she knew what that thing was and that it wanted nothing but to hurt her and anyone related to her. When I dropped her off at her house, I, and Frank as well, felt obligated to walk with her to her door. We asked if she was going to be okay, and she said she would tell her dad he was back and he would protect her like he always did. We just looked at her with concerned looks on our faces and walked back to the car. On the way to Frank's house, we saw it again, but it was heading in the opposite direction, to Sally's house. We thought it was either another one or the same one that had either gotten lost or visited someone else and was now going to Sally. Deciding that it was our duty as friends to try and protect Sally from whatever this thing was, we turned around, but when we did so, the creature reared up once again and looked at us, and then something I will never forget happened. It let loose a deep, guttural roar directed at us, a roar so bestial in nature that it shook us both to our cores. Apparently, we were not the only ones that were shaken, as my car's radio died and the engine shut off. I screamed at the top of my lungs, accompanied by Frank, and fumbled to turn it back on. By the time the creature was halfway to our car, it was walking down the road towards us. I got it back on in time to get it out of there as fast as possible. When I finally got slowed down enough to not break every speed limit in America, I realized I had passed Frank's house about 3 miles back. I didn't see the creature again that night, although I drove by Sally's house again and everything seemed fine, no broken windows or signs of forced entry, and I haven't seen anything like it since. I don't know what to call it other than a skinwalker, but whatever it was hostile, and it plagued either the local community or one of my friends specifically. I have kept in touch with both Frank and Sally refuses to talk about it and will only say, things are fine. When I ask about it, Frank can't get anything out of her either. I'm afraid for her, and I'm afraid for everyone in that area. I grew up in Northern California, Santa Rosa, to be specific. We lived in a very small row of pretty cheap houses, in the middle of a growing industrial area. Not being terribly close to many shops and not having an overabundance of kids my own age to play with, I rode my bike quite a bit. I used to spend a fair amount of time riding my bike down to the Sonoma County Airport, with a sweet, fully stocked vending machine, and then back to our own street. It was on one of these treks as a 9-year-old that I saw something that I still can't explain. It looked, for lack of a better description, like a golden oval at a slight angle. Whatever it was, it definitely wasn't touching the ground. I could see space underneath it. It didn't particularly make any noise, but rather the opposite. I noticed that the closer it got, the less I could hear anything around me. Again, we were in the middle of a busy industrial district with a cement factory and gun stock manufacturing plant within 2 blocks. However, the closer the object came, the more oppressive the silence became. It was spinning and moving about the same speed as a car as it came towards me. It paused at the stop and then turned to the left down the intersecting road. Again, it just looked like a golden oval that seemed to be muting everything in its vicinity. My lizard brain told me to get away from it, and I pedaled with all my might back towards my house. It continued down the road until it was out of sight. At the time, my best guess was that it was some kind of angel. I had read they might look like wheels, and it seemed like the best fit. Since then, I've read a lot about other people's encounters with the unknown, but I've never seen anything quite matching what I saw. This story is about a 10-year-old. I was about 20 years old, dating this guy from California. We lived in South Carolina at the time. He'd only lived in SC for a few months, so he wasn't familiar with the area. He had a job traveling to repair point-of-sale systems and retail stores. Because he grew up in Southern California, he really loved finding long country roads and just exploring the rural areas of South Carolina. It was pretty common for him to come home and pick me up so we could go explore some new roads he'd traveled for work. We lived in a very small town, and I looked forward to these adventures just to get out of town. One summer night, we decided to go for a drive down one of his roads out towards Dillon, South Carolina. It's your typical summer night in the South, with clear skies and thick, sticky air, like after you take a long, hot shower. We'd been driving down this 2-lane country road for a few miles, deep in the middle of a southern pine forest. We pass a small church on the right and come out of the woods to an open field right where the road curves towards the right. In the curve, there's a dirt road on the left-hand side. My boyfriend decides this is a good spot to stop and have a smoke. He backs the truck onto the dirt road so that the front end is facing across the main road into an open field. I can see behind us from the tail lights that there's a big gate blocking off the dirt road with a sign that says Rifle Club. Before he gets out of the truck, he leans over to give me a kiss. As we are kissing, I can't explain it, I felt like I was being watched, so I opened my eyes and looked out the window. He stopped and turned, asking what was wrong. I saw a flickering light ahead of us across the street in the field. At first, I suspected it was a light off of a radio tower or something, but as we watched, the light appeared to move, sort of swaying a bit like someone was walking and holding a light. Our first thoughts were that we had parked near some old farm we couldn't see, and the farmer was coming to chase us off. There was no fear, just a sort of shock and curiosity as we watched. It was weird because it seemed to be moving closer to us, but at the same time, it still kind of looked like it was far away in the distance. While watching, I could also see the lights from the dash of the truck reflecting off the windshield, so I thought maybe it was a reflection. We rolled the windows down, stuck our heads out of the truck, and could still see the light. The light kept coming towards us until it got about 15 feet away from the other side of the road. It stopped and went back the way it came. As soon as the light disappeared, we both felt the urgent need to leave. We took off the way we came, going back by the church and out towards the main highway. As we turn onto the main road, I see a sign that says to turn right to go to Bingham. That's when it hit me. That's when I knew exactly where we were and what we saw. As a child growing up in the area, there were many urban legends, Bingham's Light being one of them. I never truly believed it as a child. I thought it was just some old ghost story. We drove straight home that night and didn't go to sleep. The rest of the night we spent reading about Bingham's Light and other encounters. As soon as the sun came up, we drove back out to the dirt road where we parked the night before. We walked out to the field where we saw the light, looking for any evidence of what we saw, but there was nothing. It didn't make sense to me. I wasn't sure if it was Bingham's Light because the stories all claim you see the light near railroad tracks in Bingham. We decided to turn left on the dirt road and continue down the road the rest of the way, just to see where it goes. Not even half a mile down the road, we cross what used to be railroad tracks. Still, to this day, I'm unsure of what we saw. Legend says a man back in the 1800s died on the railroad tracks. There are many different versions of the story, but that's the best of them. Supposedly, if you go to the tracks, you can still see the light of his lantern. The show Unsolved Mysteries did an episode on Bingham's Light and explained that the light is just swamp gas. We drove to that area the next day in daylight, and I don't recall ever seeing any swampland near us in the area where we spotted the light. I've thought about going back out there several times, but the idea terrifies me. Maybe one day I'll get the nerve to go back. In the summer of 2011, I was 15 years old when a couple of friends of mine were hanging at my house for the night. We were invited to a small hangout in the neighborhood, so we snuck out and went. We started to have a lot of fun and convinced one of the older guys there to pick up our other really good friend, who lived way out in the countryside. Once he arrived, we did boy stuff, being loud, obnoxious, and whatnot. Soon the get-together ended and Robert needed a ride home, so I did what I usually do, steal my mom's 2001 Ford Taurus while she was asleep and drive him. Now his house is actually about a 15 to 20 minute windy, dark ride to the countryside. He lived in the woods and had some farm animals. We drove him there, seeing deer as usual, but nothing out of the ordinary happened until our way back. This gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. On the way back to town, there is this very long, straight stretch of road that's maybe 2 to 3 miles long at best. On the east side of the road is the Mississippi River, but between the road and river are train tracks. On the west side of the road is a large cement plant. But most of the straight path of the road on the west side is a very large and tall cliff. So if you're looking down the road facing north, from left to right, it's a cliff, a road, train tracks, and then a river. So we're driving, smoking cigarettes in my mom's car, not really giving a shit as usual, until I notice a blue-white light in the rear view mirror. I softly tell the guys, "Hey, look, there's a barge on the river." Thomas is sitting shotgun, and Anthony is sitting in the passenger's back seat. One of the boys replies, "Oh yeah, it is a barge." Then the other says, "That's not a barge, that's a train." So at this point, we don't notice it until a moment later, but this light is traveling above the surface of the river and then moves leftward towards the roads. As I'm looking through my side mirror, I do indeed see a train light, or so I thought at the time. The light moved closer and was on the road now. "Is that a motorcycle? What the duck is that?" I asked. Now we're panicking. This strange thing just defied our logic. I mean, we're really shitting bricks here all alone. It was so bright. It's brighter than any high beam I've ever seen. Brighter than any flashlight or anything else, for that matter. It got so close that it lit up the entire inside of the car and the area around us outside. I put the pedal to the metal, thinking we could escape and outrun the light. I remember hitting 80 miles per hour, and the light had no problem staying within 20 to 30 feet of the ass end. I remember asking Anthony to look and tell me what he saw because I was too focused on driving. I turned around and saw eyes peeping over the back seat, staring directly at it. I've never seen his eyes that wide before. Thomas also looks like he's making eye contact with a ghost. The road slightly bends left up a hill, and the train tracks lead into the woods. It stayed on our asses until the road bent, and I remember looking out the passenger window. The light was parallel to ours. Right next to us. As we stayed on the road, the light kept straight, and not long after entering the woods, it completely vanished. It didn't go behind trees or something like that, we didn't lose sight, it was there, then it wasn't. Completely vanished out of thin air. We all screamed. Shocked, scared, and confused, we cussed and questioned everything for the rest of the ride back. Completely mind-ducked. I live in Finland, the most sparsely populated country in Europe. Over 70% of the country is forest, so me and my friends just recently got a mope driving license, as we are 15 now. We thought it would be fun to drive to this huge-ass forest to camp. The forest is very big, maybe over 30 kilometers or more from the other town. So we drive there are 3 of us, set up camp, and just chill out. After some phone watching and campfire roasted sausage eating, we go for a little ride. The clock is about 8 p.m. They hop on their dirt bikes, and I hop on my scooter. We are like 3 kilometers out in the forest, driving these little forest roads, until, strangely, we can't hear any birds singing anymore. At this point, I should probably mention that in this part of Finland, where I live, it doesn't get dark at night in the summer at all. So anyway, it is literally silent. We shut down our bikes and stare at each other. We were there for a couple of minutes, and then we just started driving again. At some point, we heard a scream. Not big, but little. Well, that's just a fox, the forest is full of them. We continue. The road ends at this point, and I said that we need to turn back, I'm not going to the forest with my scooter. And now we hear the scream, it is so close that we all literally jump. We try to start our engines like crazy and drive out fast. Remember, even though the clock is now at 9, it is not dark at all. So we drive as fast as we can, and then I see it. Actually, we all see it. A white man was just standing in the forest, looking at us. The creature just looked at us as we drove past it, and nothing crazy happened. Fast forward, the clock is almost 0 o'clock, and we are laughing and eating some candy. Suddenly, we heard a loud banging noise. I still don't know where it came from, because in the forest there is nothing that makes that kind of noise. It was like banging on metal. We were scared and moved to our tents. We were there for another hour or something like that. Then we want to go to sleep. We do our usual things before bed, eat, brush our teeth, etc. As I take a piss near a tree, I see this man again. And it is so scary. It was almost 2.5 meters long, I'd say. It just looked at me from the forest, and I see it so clearly. Like every detail. It was white, had ugly looking skin, black eyes, and long hands. It had no hair at all. I literally almost started to cry and shout for them. I explained that the same guy we saw earlier was there. For some reason, they didn't care at all. So we just went to sleep, even though I couldn't sleep at all. There was almost no action at night, unless I suddenly woke up to my moped being on. I looked out and saw the duck. My moped was running, I don't know for how long it had run. One of my friends woke up at almost the same time as me and walked out of his tent. He was confused, laughed, and just said, "Why are you driving at like 5 a.m? I just said I didn't know. Was I sleepwalking?" Well, I still don't know what caused this. I don't really believe some humanoid guy can start a moped, but it seems like it can. We just left in the morning, and my friends reported that they had been hearing strange noises throughout the night. I don't know, I guess I'm not going to go there again. I'm not really scared either, I'm just confused, even though I was so scared when I saw it. One day I was driving to meet my sister for lunch in a city in Northern Virginia, about an hour from my house. It was raining outside, and I had pretty much no tread on my tires, but I didn't know that at the time. Anyway, I had to take an exit onto a busy highway. As I was turning onto the highway, my car completely lost traction, and I started spinning. I spun onto the highway, all the while just clutching my steering wheel and hoping for the best, as I had absolutely no control. I ended up stopping in the middle of the highway, facing the direction of oncoming traffic. Here's the weird part, when this happened, there was not a single car on either side of the road, not a single car in sight. Without thinking, I drove my car straight, in the opposite direction of traffic, until I reached a patch of grass. I kid you not, the second my car was out of the way, cars were flying down the road again, hundreds of them. It was an extremely busy road once more. My sister even passed me, called me, and asked if it was me parked in the grass. I immediately started crying because I was suddenly overwhelmed with the severity of what had just happened. Had the traffic been what it normally was during my accident, I would have surely been hit head on and most likely killed. I still cannot explain what happened to me to this day, it was like a glitch in the system. Obviously, it could have just been an extremely lucky coincidence. However, I drive this road quite frequently and have never ever seen this highway with not a single car in sight, and somehow there was nobody for the entire duration of my accident. If anyone has ever experienced anything similar, please let me know. I thought I'd share my experience with a local legend from where I grew up. I live in Kansas, 5 miles from Missouri and 5 miles from Oklahoma, right around the corner. Local legend goes that right along the Oklahoma/Missouri border, there is a weird glowing light that can be seen on most clear evenings. In some tales, the light is the yellow color of a glowing lantern, being swung as a man or woman looks for their lost lover. Another tale says that it is the glowing orange of an Indian's torch. Either way, it has been spooking people for well over 100 years. My great-grandfather grew up just off what is known as Spook Light Road in the late 1800s, and his family claimed to have seen the light many times. In the past, the light has been known to get terrifyingly close to cars or suddenly jump over the hood of a car. No matter what it does, its movements are always erratic, and it always disappears just as quickly as it showed up. It'll be there for minutes at a time, and then, poof, gone. Many possible explanations have been given for what the light is, but no one who's seen it, especially multiple times, really believes them. One possible theory is that swamp gas is creating balls of glowing gas. The other often given explanation is that it is headlights on cars from a nearby interstate. However, since the light has been seen since well before the road was built and cars existed, most doubt that theory as well. Now, for my experiences. The first time I saw the light, I was 12 years old and on a sleepover with some girls my age. We drove out with my cousin's parents and didn't see anything for about 30 minutes. Then, out of nowhere, we see a glowing yellowish ball about the size of a volleyball in the rear view mirror. Moments later, after hovering mid-air, the light jumps to the front of the car, about 100 feet ahead. We try to drive up to it, but we are never able to catch it. Eventually, it just disappeared over a rise in the road. The other times I've seen it, it has been much less up close. Every other time, it just lets you chase it and then goes behind you or completely disappears. I've probably been out there 8 times, and I've seen it every single time. I've never felt scared seeing it. Even the first time. I just felt an overwhelming calm. Me and my friend were driving in a very forested, mountainous area at around midnight. We were searching for new roads to travel on and found one that looked really promising. Thick trees, streets without diving lines, etc. We had been driving up it for about 10 minutes. We remember it was up because he kept having to gear shift to make it up the road, when I started to feel weird. I told him about it, and we laughed it off. Then we saw a bright yellow sign with the words 1,000 feet road ends. I started to become more serious and told him I didn't feel right, and he agreed, but again, we brushed it off and made a joke about something waiting at the end of the road. We passed another sign, 500 feet road ends. At this point, we felt strange enough that I told him to turn around immediately once he reached the end. When we did, it got really unsettling. The end of the road was gravel, with wooden bars at the end and a sign saying end of road. There was a small compound of buildings, I'll expand on that in a moment, and trees ahead. I was in the passenger seat, so when my friend turned the car, I faced the trees. Something was really wrong with them. Usually, even at the top of the mountain, there's some sort of curvature to the land. At least little hills and bumps. But the land was completely flat. There was no vegetation around any of the trees, and they were all equally slender and pale. The strangest thing was that all the trees were perfectly spaced. Exact same distance between each one. When our headlights cut through the trees, in a very wrong way, is really all I can describe it as we turned, I freaked out. My stomach felt sick, my bones were heavy, and I told my friend to speed up. While I was panicking about the strange trees, he saw the buildings to the left of the road and felt the exact same. He later told me the buildings looked wrong, like they weren't supposed to be there, and he immediately sped up his turn after seeing them. It was a compound, with a big building at the front and 2 smaller ones in the back, all made of red wood. There were no parking signs plastered everywhere. Again, like me, he said the way the headlights shone on the buildings was really wrong and made him feel sick. We sped up and drove out of there. After calming down, we decided to keep driving in a different direction. We took completely different roads and listened to music. Eventually, we ended up on a road we hadn't been on that slope down. After a couple minutes of driving, I told my friend I felt weird again. I told him I felt like we were on the same road. He dismissed it, citing several reasons why this couldn't be the same road. The road was now sloped down, not up. There were 2 signs detailing a curvy path with 20 miles per hour, and a blue truck parked in a parking lot that hadn't been there on the other road. I agreed, though I still felt unsettled, and we kept driving. Then we went around a curve, and there it was. 1,000 feet road ends. I freaked out, and so did he. We quickly turned way before the 500 feet sign we could see gleaming in the distance. As we drove back, we found ourselves driving down. Which didn't make sense because we were driving down that road only minutes before. We began to see things that had been on the old road on the way back, a singular orange streetlight and a particular house with a specific number that my friend had remembered. And on the way back, there were no curvy path signs. Extremely unsettled, we decided to call it a night and drove home. Neither of us tends to be very superstitious or paranormally inclined, but we both felt so strongly wrong about that road without talking to each other about it beforehand. We have no idea what that could have been. Less than 10 minutes ago, I was on my way home with my friends. About 10 minutes into my drive, I noticed I was being followed. Literally all the way home, more than 10 miles from the time I noticed this dark cloud thing. I was on the freeway, going about 60 miles per hour, when I noticed it. It never missed a beat. Literally kept exact pace with me for 10 plus miles. Literally, the only way I can describe the thing is as a small thundercloud, pitch black but somewhat able to see through. It was about 5 feet high and, I guess, about 25 to 30 feet long. I was the only car on the road, and out of the corner of my eye in the right-hand lane next to me was this thing. A cloud is the best way I can describe it. It was very dark and formless, kind of translucent. I could barely see through it, but it was transparent enough for me to not 100% be sure it was there. It really freaked me out, so I called my wife, and then I decided to change lanes into it to see if it would disappear, and it did. I thought so anyway. About 30 seconds after I lost sight of it, it instantly reappeared right outside my driver's window. It was a little bit taller than my car and was about 3x as long. When I took the exit to get home, it disappeared again, and I thought I lost it. In less than a minute, it reappeared outside my passenger seat. It was almost as if it would just float over my car from one side to the other while keeping pace with me the entire time until I turned onto my driveway, where it disappeared again. My driveway is about a half-mile long, shared with 5 other houses. The house right before mine has a dog that always runs up and jumps on the chain-link fence and barks like clockwork, but as I drove by, it ran toward the fence and stopped dead in its tracks about 15 feet from the fence and didn't make a sound. This has never happened before. Seriously, this dog never misses a chance to yell at the neighbors. My wife was waiting in the front yard for me when I pulled up, but because of the darkness of the driveway and lack of lights, she said she couldn't see anything. Has anyone ever heard of anything like this? I'm honestly freaking out that he's out right now. Back in the summer of 2008, one of my good friends and I were on a no-destination road trip around the west coast of the USA. We were somewhere in the very rural parts of Oregon, and I had been driving for nearly half a day. It was very late, and there was absolutely nobody on the road save for an 18-wheeler some distance behind me. It followed our car for what seemed like forever, its high beams blaring in my face so much that I had to cover my eyes. I sped to nearly 80 miles per hour but could not shake the semi off. I was getting angry and frustrated, so I pulled off to the side of the road and let him pass me. As I saw the truck speed ahead, I made a comment to my friend about what an asshole the driver was, and my friend looked confused and asked me what the duck I was talking about. That goddamn truck, I replied. Now, I don't know who the crazy one is here, but he claims there was no 18-wheeler, no headlights, and that I just pulled over, reacting to absolutely nothing. I quickly re-entered the road and sped forward to try and catch the truck, but it was nowhere in sight. To this day, I still have no idea what happened that night. Tonight was one of the scariest things I've witnessed, and I just don't know how to explain it. It's my second incident with the same thing, but this was far scarier than the first. So the first incident I didn't think much about was last April Fool's Day, when my husband and I were driving home from a friend's ranch. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flash of white as our lights illuminated something by the side of the road in the adjoining field. It looked like a stark white, naked man, but he was running on hands and feet like an animal, going very fast and parallel to our car but in the opposite direction. We both saw it and were creeped out, but hell, it's April Fools, and we're in the middle of nowhere in rural Montana. People get bored and do stupid things, and they like to take opportunities to spook people. Halloween gets crazy here. So we figured some guy was playing a prank. Then tonight happened. I went down the road to where the mailboxes for our street are. It's that rural road delivery setup where you have about 20 mailboxes at the end of the long country road. It's about 200 yards from our house, and the moon's out, so I figure I'll walk over and check the mail to see if my husband picked it up. When I get there, I find a neighbor not too far from our front door heading the same way on a walk, so we start talking, and she accompanies me to the mailboxes. I take a peek in the box and find nothing. We continue chatting for a few minutes, then suddenly there's barking from several of the neighborhood dogs across from us. One at a time, they start furiously snarling and barking, with a few of them howling. My neighbor mentions that there must be coyotes roaming around again. It happens all the time, there is nothing to worry about. Then one of the dogs starts howling. She called the cops. All we could do was wait and hide in the shed while she told the cops to come out, hearing her dog barking and attacking whatever the thing was. After a couple minutes, she was off the phone, and we were hiding behind boxes of stuff away from the windows. I don't know how long we were there before she whispered that the dog wasn't barking anymore. He wasn't making any noise at all. A few moments after that, we heard crunching from outside. Something started scratching slowly and hard against the front door and part of the wall next to it. I'm not too proud to admit that I pissed myself a little bit and had to throw my hands over my mouth to keep from screaming. She was staring at the door, not moving, so I know I wasn't overreacting or going hysterical for nothing. It seemed like forever, but eventually we saw the lights from the cops coming up the long road, and the scratching stopped. Whatever it was ran off because we heard the noise of leaves crunching hard and fast away from the door. She was the brave one with the guts to peek out the window to wave at the cops when they got close enough. When they got near, we ran out to the cop cars and told them we saw some kind of man who chased us. She pointed out the direction we had gone and ran back, mentioning the sounds of the dogs in the opposite neighborhood, a few yards from the mailboxes. She said how her dog came to help us, and we hid in the shed. The cop taking our statement said that someone else had called a few minutes before she did and said there was a wolf or something in their backyard that killed some chickens and their dog, and the neighbor down from her saw this thing too. The other cop found my neighbor's dog laying on the ground with what looked like deep claw wounds, and he was having trouble breathing. As he was skinny. When he started running after us, it wasn't awkward, like a guy trying to run on his hands and feet. It was like a person, but not a person, on his hands and feet, but very much in control of his movements like an animal. This isn't the first time this kind of thing has happened. It's not the first time I've heard of odd things. Montana is one of those kinds of places where many odd and unexplainable things live and happen. We're mostly a mix of huge forestland, mountains, and open plains. There are lots of places where things you don't normally expect to see can hide around here. But it's the first time something odd has come after me in the dark. I was in Tampa visiting my aunt and grandma. They lived 2 turns off of a very long, fairly main road, and I always remembered this weird-looking building about halfway down the road on the left. The architecture was super specific and was the only building for quite a ways on either side, about 3/4 mile from the first turn to get to their house. It always stuck out to me as a kid as my marker that we were just around the corner. One night I went to a concert about 1.5 to 2 hours away. My aunt let me borrow her car, and I had to pick up another girl along the way. She lived about 20 minutes from my aunt's, and I had to get on the freeway to get to her house. I picked her up, we went to the concert, and then I drove her home. I can't remember the exact time of night, but it was late enough that very few cars were left on the roads. I believe sometime between 12 and 2 a.m. this girl lived in what I would describe as the swampy suburbs. There were lots of family homes, but the roads weren't paved super well, there were no street lamps, no sidewalks, and it was windy and confusing. It was not a clearly laid out grid, and I absolutely need my GPS to guide me in and out. A couple minutes after I dropped her off and started my 20-minute journey back to my family's house, I noticed that my phone had only 2% left. I immediately started speeding to get out of the confusing, windy roads of this neighborhood before I lost my GPS. My aunt called me to ask me where I was, and as I said, I can't talk, I only have 2%, my phone died. I was in a practically pitch black neighborhood with no sign of any main roads or any clear direction on how to get out. It felt like I was in a never-ending maze. I went down road after road, flipping U-turns and random dark driveways, hitting dead ends on every other turn. I was screaming and panicking, hitting the steering wheel with my hands. I was so scared. But after 5 to 10 minutes of this, I had an insane sense of calm wash over me. In an instant, I knew it was all going to be okay and that God, I was a Christian at the time, no longer, would guide me home. I knew there was no way something bad was going to happen to me, and that felt like a fact. It was bizarre, like my body knew something I didn't. The next turn I took, she spit me out on a new road. I turned right and immediately noticed the weird building by my aunt's house, literally on the corner. I turned around in the parking lot and went back down the road to their house, putting the building back on my left. I was home less than 10 minutes after I had dropped the girl off and got back through the suburbs, when earlier that night it took me 20 minutes on the freeway. But here's the kicker. The next day I wanted to see what street I had come out of the night before, and, I kid you not, there was no street there. Not even close. The next street that I would have been able to turn from would have been the first to get to my family's, about 3/4 mile down. But when I turned onto the main drag the night before, the weird building was immediately on my right. This has always been such an insane memory of mine, and I know whoever I tell it to thinks I must have just missed the street somehow, but I went through every possibility and it just wasn't there. On top of that, it took me a significantly shorter amount of time to get home from that girl's house, especially after panicking and going down random dead ends, adding 5 to 10 minutes. Plus getting home in that amount of time through a neighborhood when before I had to take the freeway to get to her house. And the inexplicable knowing that I was going to be alright, and the literal next turn putting me on the literal only landmark I know in that area. For a few years, my husband and I lived in West Virginia, in this little town called Eleanor. Now, Those of you who have heard of Mothman would know that Point Pleasant is also in WV, and my husband and I would drive there every so often from Eleanor, taking the longer but less traveled way down the 62 through Buffalo and a number of small unincorporated towns. Anyway, so on the road past Buffalo heading to Point Pleasant, there was some sort of glitchy area, but only in one direction. Just past the town of Leon was an area of basically mountains on one side and drops on the other. At a certain spot, I could show it to you if we were there, the radio would start cutting out, doing that static whiny thing like it was trying to find the station, both going and coming. We just figured it was the mountain messing with the signal, which would make sense, no biggie, we ignored it. When we drove home from Point, though, based on the time it took us to get there, we figured to arrive home at a certain time. When we got there, we noticed we were 12 minutes earlier than we expected. Of course, I was just driving faster, right? Except, I didn't think I was. That area is one you don't really want to go over 55 in, but I also don't like to go too slow, so I would want to keep it around 50 the whole time. So, we tested it. A couple of weeks later, we had a reason to be in Point again, and we again took the back way through Buffalo and Leon. We logged the time we passed out of Buffalo, and the 35 miles per hour limit, and I maintained 50 miles per hour the entire remaining distance to the Tiger Mart just outside of Point. We stopped at the Tiger Mart, logged the time immediately, and got a drink. On the way back home, we stopped at the Tiger Mart again, grabbed a drink, logged the time, and headed off. We made sure to log the time right when we stopped, rather than after we went in for drinks, and right before we drove off so as not to skew the time we were actually on the road. I maintained 50 miles per hour all the way to Buffalo, where we stopped and logged the time. The return trip was 12 minutes shorter again. We did this several more times, almost like a scientific experiment, and every time the return trip was 12 minutes shorter, and if we had the radio on, it would mess up just after Leon for several miles. Again, this part could be the mountain and not glitch related, but I included it because the first time it was the radio that caught our attention. I don't know why it happens, I just chalked it up as another weird thing about wild, wonderful WV. I just had an encounter that I'd like to talk about. I was out for a drive this evening through some back roads outside my small urban town around 10:30 to 11 p.m. I've driven these roads dozens of times before, and I've never had an issue. Until tonight. So I'm cruising around the twisty roads, enjoying myself and kind of in my zone, when I come over the crest of a right turn that goes up a hill, which then sweeps down into a flat left turn, which has a guardrail along the right side of the road. As I crest the hill, I was going fairly slowly, 40 to 50, as there are often deer and opossums in the area. I notice a moving figure along the guardrail. I begin to slow some more, as I figure it's a deer and don't want to hit it. But as I get closer, I realize it's not a deer. It looks like a man. At this point, I'm barely moving, just creeping forward as I get closer to it, and I realize it's a man who's crouched down in a sort of Slav squat, and he's now turned around to look at me. In my headlights, the first things I notice are that he's not wearing any clothes, save for a pair of tight jeans or an adult diaper. His eyes are oddly large for an adult man and completely brown or black, and his skin is ghostly white. As I approached, I turned my brights on, and he didn't even flinch. By now, I've completely stopped and started to reach down to get my phone, as I wanted to take a video. This was a huge mistake. I looked away for a split second to grab my phone from the passenger seat, and as I'm starting to look down, he starts sprinting. At me. He's running directly toward me. Duck. He gets up to my window and starts scrambling. Not just like a man yelling, but like all the rage he's ever felt is coming out at this moment, and it's directed at me. He starts pounding on the window with his fists, all the while screaming his head off. This lasts for about 3 seconds before I throw it in first gear and peel it out, though it felt like a whole minute. As I'm accelerating, first gear and my car takes me to 40 miles per hour, I look in my rear view and realize he's keeping up with me. It's not until I get it in second, then third, and take it up to around 80 that I can no longer see him. He was running at inhuman speeds, trying to keep up. I flew the rest of the way home, afraid to stop or look in my mirrors. I got in the driveway, ran inside, and typed this up. I have no idea what I encountered, but I did, and I hated every second of it. I'll be finding other routes to take when I take nighttime drives in the future, just to be sure I don't meet him again. I saw something on the road that has changed me. I just want to know if anyone has experienced something similar or has an idea of what I saw. It was December, and I was Christmas shopping with a friend of mine. It took up most of the day, so we had quite the load. It was dark by now, so we figured there was not much else to do, but we might as well power through wrapping everything. By the time we finished, It was a bit after 1 and we were out of smoke, so we left my place for a gas station. I had done all the driving during our shopping because she doesn't handle busy traffic very well, so she offered to drive. I'm a bit of a night owl, so late night drives aren't out of the ordinary, and the road I live on is a long one. It is not isolated or in a rural area, but there are wooded areas all around and a train track close to my place. The neighborhood has quite a lot of apartment buildings and houses. The point is that it's a busy road that I take daily, especially at night. So as we leave the gas station, we are coming up to the intersection with a stop sign that we need to turn left on to get to my place. I was on the passenger side playing Pokemon Go when my friend said, "That person must be crazy to be jogging out." I look up to see that they are approaching the intersection, and there is someone jogging across it. I laughed in agreement. But I was in awe and blurted out, "Wow, dude, he is fast, holy SHT, and really tall. Why is he running so weird?" At first, I didn't think much, but as we got closer, I realized he was running, hunched, and leaning forward with his arms outstretched behind, kind of like the run they do in Naruto. Except for his arms, we were so long past the knee with giant outstretched hands and long fingers. He was skinny, and I mean sickly skinny. The closer we got, the more wrong everything looked and felt. His movements were so weird. Like twitchy but so fluid for the speed at which he was going. There are street lights all along the intersections and roads, but it was so weird because it seemed unusually dark out. As we came to the stop sign under the street light, he had just crossed and came to a stop right before the edge of where the light reached, about 15 yards out of that. That's when I looked at the dash clock, and it all hit me at once. It was the middle of winter at 1:30 a.m., cold as balls out, and there was someone jogging. And I realized this guy wasn't a guy. This thing was standing back towards us, hunched forward with arms stretched behind with those long, outstretched claws. It was the most intimidating stance I've ever seen. Easily over 7 and completely black. Its head was shaped like a teardrop. At this point, we had been sitting at the stop sign, staring at it for 10 seconds, when it did the fastest 180 I have ever seen and was coming straight at us. I have never experienced intense fear and panic that have crashed on me. Pure terror, it felt so heavy, and my whole being was screaming, "Danger! You're in danger!" I yelled, "Go go go!" The car screeched as we took off, and my phone flew out of my hand. I looked behind us and sank deeper into a state of terror. This thing was not just keeping up, it was gaining on us. I yelled at the floor, it was right behind us. At 60, we started to lose it. I scrambled for my phone to call 911. The car came to a stop, and I immediately turned to my friend. She was staring forward, wide-eyed. She kept saying, "I need to see it. I need to see it." I was so panicked that I instinctively turned her towards me and said, "You're not crazy. I saw it too. You are now crazy, I saw it too. I saw it too. It's real. We need to go before it gets us." She snapped out of it and floored it. I grabbed my phone, dialed 911, and stopped. It's like I finally was able to get a grip back on myself, almost like it was a result of the distance between us and that thing. My friend yelled, "What are you doing? Call the cops." My response was, "They'll never believe us." I used to listen to a podcast called Monsters Among Us, and I remembered the host's words about how when people see things, he sometimes wishes they would turn around to verify what they saw. So I told her, "Don't pull up my place, it could still be behind us. Floor it to the end of the road. We are going to switch as fast as we can. I'm going to drive and put my phone against the windshield to record. You are going to use your phone to record. Then we can have more proof for the police to back up what just happened." She panicked and said no over and over, but she gunned it and drove past my place. We got to the end of the road, switched, and I gunned it in the direction of the thing. Nothing. This all happened in minutes, and the speed at which it was going meant we should have met. We started to approach where we had first seen it, and I don't know how to explain it, but I started to feel that fear again. I realized when we lost it, it must have turned around and gone back in the other direction further down the road where we first saw it. The speed limit is 25, and I slowed down to 15 when that fear started weighing down. I couldn't believe what happened. It was like a movie. A big group of deer came running in the direction we were headed. They were literally running in the middle of the road around and next to the car, bumping into each other. There had to be over 10 of them, buck and doe, in the middle of the run towards the car, like it was far less dangerous than what they were running from. I have never seen deer run that fast or so tightly together in that number. I had to come to a complete stop and wait for them to get by before I continued driving. My friend commented, "It must be in that direction. Something must have terrified those deer to run towards us like that. It's got to be that thing we saw." I was thinking the same thing and started to feel the fear again. I continued down the stretch of road. Nothing. We couldn't find it. I drove till 6 a.m., too scared to go home without proof to give the police to look for it. I convinced myself I would be safe if I knew the police were driving around my area looking for it. Scared that it might follow me home if it were still light out. Now, after these months, some nights I can be in my living room playing a game and feel that same primal fear and panic wash over me. It wasn't every day. Just a couple times a week. Like it must be close, and that's why I'm feeling this state of terror. I've had it where I was gaming, laughing with friends, and that terror crashed into me like that thing was close and watching me. I know I'm not in a constant state of paranoia, and that's why I feel the fear. I'll be enjoying my night with friends or something completely out of my mind, and boom. The terror is starting to be more frequent and intense. I'm a smoker, so at night I smoke, and everything will feel fine. I feel safe. Other times, I feel watched and unsafe. Like my body is screaming, "You are in danger." But since that night, I have seen something around my place, behind the fence and tree lines. Even something peeking into my patio. I'm just looking for, comfort in people who have answers for what it is, are going through it, or have experienced something like this. Because the thing I saw on the road that night was black. The thing I saw after was white, with almost glowing white eyes. And sharp, exposed teeth. But the same tall, thin body and teardrop-shaped head. I know this all sounds crazy. Typing it all made me feel much more aware of how crazy it sounds. But I felt like I had to reach out for answers. In Sydney, there's this national park drive where people complete runs, which consist of trying to complete the drives within a time stamp. I've been doing these so-called Nashu runs for a while now with my best friend every now and then, and nothing has happened before. The drive through the park is spooky at night, sure, but I've always found comfort in woodland or night drives, so I never thought of anything. A few nights ago, 3 of my friends and I went for a Nashu run, and exactly at the halfway point, we hit a pothole pretty hard, which resulted in a flat tire, so we pulled over to the side on a long road. This place has no reception, and it's in the middle of nowhere with no ways of walking through or back. We had a spare tire but no change kit, and so I had one friend on call for help, which was a pain in the ass due to a lack of reception. My best friend panics a lot, so she was on the verge of crying, and I was rummaging through the boot for a wrench and a jack. About 20 meters away was a parked car, which was strange because the last house we passed was about a kilometer away, so we just shrugged it off. Later on in the dead of night, we hear a group of friends laughing, and this spooked my friends, so they stayed in the car. I told them I was going to follow the laughter and ask if they had a change kit in their parked car, and Nate insisted on coming with me. We walk 20 meters to the parked car, and no one is in there, so it gets pretty ducking dark, so I tell him to turn his flashlight on, which he does. We turn a corner on a gravel road, and once we do, we see a woman standing there with her back facing us, and the group laughter has stopped, which leaves us in silence. She looked pretty normal to me, so I approached her slowly, saying, "Hey." And she didn't turn around or react, so I stopped in my tracks, but Nate continued walking towards her, and he stopped about 5 meters behind her. I yelled out, "Oi." And again, she didn't turn around. We weren't able to see her face, but something wasn't right. She was tall and all white, but I looked at Nate, and he just stood there and, under his breath, muttered my name and told me to go repeatedly, so I turned around and started walking, and by the time we passed the car, we started running back to our car. We sat inside, and I asked what happened, and he said that something was wrong because a woman shouldn't be standing there by herself in pitch darkness in the middle of a gravel road, and in addition to that, she didn't turn around to the sound of us or our source of light. We told our 2 other friends, and Nate was very shaken up. They sort of laughed it off, and when we ended up changing the tire, we turned the car back around and stopped right where we saw the woman. I rolled the window down and shined my flash. The gravel road was blocked, and the woman was gone. No more laughter, just silence. I thought maybe I had imagined her, but we stood right there, and Nate was right behind her. However, every single one of us heard the group laughter, and there are a fair share of paranormal stories about this national park drive due to the number of deaths, but I never paid attention to them.